My name is Warren Lucas. I am the Research and Partnerships Manager of Sports Science Institute, and I'm very happy to welcome you all to our first of two Oceans Marathon talks. The next one is going to be on the 8th of April, but we'll put it up a little bit later. I'm sure you've seen it on the slideshow just now. We'll put it up again so that you can save the date. Um, as you could see with this talk, the registration process went very quickly, and even though a lot of people registered, I still see some empty seats. So yeah, hopefully they'll come in soon. On behalf of the Sports Science Institute, we are very proud to be working with the Totalsports Two Oceans Marathon, and we also look forward to hearing from our guest speakers, Prof. Andrew Bosch, Dr. Donnie Fick, and Prof. Dale Ray. I'd like to welcome our chairperson of the Totalsports Two Oceans Marathon to the podium to just open up our seminar today. Please put your hands together for Ilse.
Thank you, Warren. I welcome you warmly this evening, seeing that it's a little bit chilly outside, it's a little bit wet, and that may be why some people are probably still stuck in traffic, so I'm sure that one or two people will still struggle in. Thank you very much for your attendance here tonight. We hope that we can offer you some great advice and support you in your running journey. I've obviously got to do some thanks because stuff like this doesn't just happen magically. It takes a lot of organization and a lot of support from very loyal partners. So firstly, we'd like to thank the host venue and the presenter of these talks, the Sports Science Institute. So we can't do this without you, and with the help of our official health, fitness, and wellness partner in collaboration with the Health through Physical Activity, Lifestyle, and Sports Research Department at UCT. Very, very grateful for the two talks and the training guides and the tips that you provide. I'm sure everybody watches the socials closely to see what additional help they can get, and it's all very, very useful. Of course, you know that the drinks outside, as well as all the drinks on our training runs, as well as the drinks on our races, are supplied by our official beverage and hydration partner, Coca-Cola Peninsula Beverages and Powerade. And then, of course, our title sponsor, Totalsports. We actually had a meeting with them today, and it's always such a pleasure interacting with Totalsports. They're a brilliant partner to have, and of course, such a well-suited partner for the Two Oceans Marathon. So thank you very much to all our partners, and then a special shout out to Dr. Mandla Moyo, who is the CEO of Sports Science Institute and has been a fantastic partner to Tom, to the Two Oceans Marathon. It's not the first year that we're collaborating, and we hope that the partnership lasts way into the future. So thank you very much for your assistance and your support and for hosting us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ilse. I'd like to bring on our CEO, Dr. Mandla Moyo, to also just give a few words before we jump into our first presentation with Prof. Andrew Bosch. Dr. Moyo?
It's a great evening to be with you all. A bit chilly outside, but I'm hoping it will keep us refreshed for the talks that are coming up. As a runner myself, we are always on this quest for knowledge. We want to learn how we can run faster, longer, touch ourselves on the road for the maximum amount possible. And on that note, I do look forward to the talks that we have lined up today. To those of you that haven't interacted with SSISA before, the Sports Science Institute was set up in 1994. We were birthed from the beginning with the H-Pulse Research Center. You can see what they do. And the activities that we provide include a gym, there's a high performance center, there's a hospital on the 5th floor, if you can believe it. We've got about 20 clinical disciplines, including sports medicine, physio, biokinetics, dietary, podiatry, everything that you can think of within the sporting world. A conference center that we have in this room that you're in today. And we have a college, an education hub that award certificates and diplomas to students that are learning to be personal fitness trainers. There's a lot that we do, and we're so grateful that the Totalsports Two Oceans Marathon has embraced us year after year to share what we have, because our mission is about dissemination, translation of science, and this is one of the ways in which we do that in terms of sharing the knowledge that we have within SSISA and also within our partner UCT. So I look forward to that talk today. I hope all of us walk away with a few powerful nuggets that will help us about a month from now when we hit the roads. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moya. I'd like to bring up our next speaker, and it is Associate Professor Andrew Bosch. Andrew Bosch is an exercise scientist based at the University of Cape Town and at the Sports Science Institute of South Africa, and he lectures on exercise physiology and sports nutrition and conducts and supervises research on these topics across master's, honors, master's, and PhD levels. He is an NRF-rated scientist with over 100 publications in both local and international journals. He's written a number of book chapters on these topics as well and has presented both at local and international scientific conferences. He also serves on boards of international exercise and sports medicine journals. Prof. Bosch is the chair of American College of Sports Medicine, Endurance Athlete Science and Medicine Interest Group, and the co-chair of the International Sub-2 Hours Marathon Project, and serves on the committee of the International Association of Ultra Running Scientific Commission and the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport. Please put your hands together for Professor Bosch.
Academic, super, but what does he know about running, really? So just to kind of make myself credible, I just want to give you a little bit of background on that side so you will trust what I'm saying later. The reason and how I got into being here in this academic world in the first place was because I was a runner, and I was at university studying a BSc in physiology and biochemistry, and then I made a shift into exercise physiology because of my running interest. I've had some fairly good results in my career. I would like to have had them better. I've got a marathon PB of 2:20. That was in the old shoes, so the old non-elastic EVA with the new shoes with the energy return, like one of the carbon fiber plate shoes, like one of them, for instance, like the New Balance Supercomp Elite. If I was running that day in one of those shoes, I'd be able to proudly stand here and say that my marathon PB was 2:17. But yeah, sadly that was before I was before those shoes came out. Comrades, I've gone just under 6 hours. So I do speak with a level of understanding, is what I'm trying to get across. On the coaching side, I've coached on both ends of the spectrum and everything else in between. So from some of the top athletes in South Africa to world championships, Olympics, podiums on oceans and comrades, South African marathon record holders, etc., etc. So that's a fun side to work on, but an equally fun side to work with is on the other end of the scale, those people who are trying to finish comrades. So the very slow runner, and getting them to be able to finish for the first time, or finish 2 oceans for the first time, or to improve from 11 hours to 9 hours or something like that. And I'm happy to say that I have had quite a, well, I think I've put almost 100% success rate on doing that. So that sounds kind of boastful, but that wasn't the intention, it isn't the intention. It's, like I say, to get you to believe what's coming next, and that I might actually speak with a little bit of authority. So moving on to training itself, I can't at this point give each one of you a training program that's going to get you through the half marathon if you're doing the half, or get you through whatever time you're aiming for if you're doing the ultra race. So I'm doing another approach, and that is I'm going to try and educate you a little bit in a way that you can examine your own training program that you've been following, what you're planning on doing in the next 5 weeks or so, and go and have a look at it and say, oh my gosh, maybe I should do this, maybe I should leave that out, maybe I should include something else, because there is enough time to make those kind of tweaks at this point. So a little bit of kind of educate yourself, because every runner is different. So there are some programs on the Two Oceans website for different categories, and they're very broad for different levels of performance in the half marathon as well as in the ultra. And they go and have a look at them. They might give you some insights. The problem with them, though, and any generic program, is just that they're generic. And every single one of you sitting here now needs your own program. Even like running friends. I always say you've got to choose your running friend or your running partner very, very carefully, because there's no such thing as a true running friend. Somebody is running wrong. Somebody's either running too fast, or somebody's running too slow, or something like that. And I'll use an example, for instance. There's two friends in Johannesburg that I coach. And after, say, something like a comrade, they go into a rest phase and they're just jogging around, and now they're ready to start building up for some marathon that they want to do. So they start off training together, and their programs start off kind of identical. And in just a few weeks, it starts diverging. And so, for instance, now they're both going off to an international marathon shortly, and their programs are so different. And yet, they started off fairly similarly. And that is because different people adapt to programs in different ways. Some people adapt fast, some people adapt slowly, some people adapt better to speed work than others, some adapt better to hills, some adapt better to the long runs and so on. So really, you need a program that is customized for you and only you. And so if I instruct you a little bit about what you look for in your program, you can maybe make the necessary tweaks. So training is a continuum. So on the left-hand side over here, we'll have where a lot of club runners sit as being undertrained. And on the other end of the scale over here, we have those who have trained too much and are overtrained. And we see plenty of that. And especially you'll see if somebody goes and runs Oceans this year, and they're 2 minutes off the time that they were looking for, and they think, well, I was so close, if I do more this and more that and more something else, then I can really hit that time for sure next year. And they do that, but they don't get the balance right, and they end up on the right-hand side, they're overtrained, and they have a worse race than what they had this year. Where you want to be is in this area over here, which I've labeled as optimized training load, and I've got that fancy wording over there, functional overreaching, and I'll explain that in a graph or two coming up. But just as a sneak preview, what training is about is you go out for your run, and that is a stressor to the body. And in response to that stress, there's physiological adaptations that take place to kind of counter that stress. And it's what's happening in the muscle cells and all the rest. There is that response. That is what we call training. Amongst us athletes call that training. And what the training effect is the body adapting to that stress that you put on. But to get a stress, you've got to put on a little bit of overload. And so that's what that optimized training load is all about, is a little bit of overload. But as you'll see in a moment, you've also got to reduce that load at times to allow all that adaptation to take place, which is where the training effect, if you like, takes place. And that is called functional overreaching. So you push the runner just a little bit, just before they're going to, like, say, break down almost, if you want to get dramatic about it, and then you pull back on the training load. And you allow the body to do its thing, to fix everything up. That's the training response, and then you move on from there. And like I say, I will show that more in a little figure diagram thing in a moment. Then over here we get non-functional overreaching. So the functional overreaching is where the body can fix up what has happened and you get that training response. The non-functional overreaching is that when you've done too much and it can't fix itself up quickly enough before you put on the next load. And that is the path that spirals down into overtraining. And instead of getting better and better, you get worse and worse and slower and slower. And in my day, we would respond to that because we knew no better by training harder when we saw the performances dropping off. And if you were mentally tough enough, you'd just drill yourself into the ground until you were absolutely overtrained. And sometimes there are athletes that have never recovered from overtraining. We don't really understand what goes on physiologically. So sometimes you can recover from it, other times you never fully recover from it. So I spoke about the training load. So I'm just going to go down this list. So on the top there, progressive increase in load, volume, duration, intensity. So what that is all about is you can't just go from, say you're at 30 Ks a week right now. You can't after this talk decide, oh, I've done far too much, and go and run 45 Ks a week next week, or 55 the week thereafter. A lot of times that I take on a runner, I see just that in their training programs. You go look at their last 3 months of training, which is what I ask for, and you see like 30 Ks, 35 Ks, 30 Ks, 55 Ks, geez, what happened there? And then it's 40 Ks, 40 Ks, 60 Ks, 60 Ks, 50 Ks, and injured. Well, yeah, not surprised. So everything, you can ask Tennant, I've been coaching her for years, everything is slow and progressive and graded. So you go from 30 Ks to 35 Ks to 40 Ks, 45, 50, and so on. If you're doing speed work, if you're wanting to do interval work on the tracks, that's when you go fast for like 400 meters and you jog and you go fast and so on. You don't just dive in and go, you read that Kipchoge does 2400s in 60 seconds, so geez, that worked for Kipchoge, it'll work for me. It's not going to work for you, it's going to kill you. You start at 4 400s at your own speed, and then you do 5, and then 6, and then 8, and then 10, and you build up slowly and progressively, and because you're building up slowly and progressively, the body can adapt to that, and you get the training response, and you get faster. It's when you just dive in at the deep end that you get injuries and no training response and so on. And then you say, oh, speed work doesn't work. Speed work works for everybody. So already some of you sitting here will be thinking, oh, nice talking about speed work. I don't need it, I'm a slow runner. Well, I have some of the slowest runners I work with. There's some runners that run like their marathons at 6 minutes a cap. They are doing speed work. Speed work for them. It might be a walk almost for Kipchoge. But for them, it's speed work. And it doesn't matter that it's slow in some context. For them, it's fast. And it's getting the desired physiological effects to make them a better runner. Right. So increase in the load, the volume, got to be slow and gradual. Same thing with duration, which kind of ties in with the volume. So the most times an increase in training volume for a week comes along because somebody has done training runs of 15K most weeks, and then suddenly they decide to go, beta base coming up, oh my gosh, and they jump from the 15Ks to running a 25K or something like that. So the same applies as it does for a week increase, small increases every week. It also goes for any specific run. You don't just jump from a 20K run to a 35K run. It goes from 20Ks to 23Ks to 25 to 28. And that way, you'll sit here now, and if I say, okay, you're going to do a 65K training run before comrades, so those of you are going to do comrades. Okay, the 21K people, clearly not. Okay, but, so you'd say, 65K training run, that's impossible. Well, it's not. It seems impossible now because maybe your longest training run is 35Ks. But as I build you up, as you build up properly to like 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, the 60, when you get there, you've got so much background behind you that it no longer feels nearly as bad as what you think it's going to feel right now. So as long as you do these things and introduce them in a slow, progressive way, it's very, very doable. Okay, then we get the functional overreaching again. It's an essential part of training that you can't just go and run 8 Ks every day, 5 minutes a K pace, and think you're going to improve. You'll be stuck. You'll never improve. You've got to get uncomfortable at some point and push it a little bit. And once again, that's the functional overreaching. And then the recovery that I spoke about, you can't just keep pushing. You've got to pull back a little bit. I'll address that again in a moment. And we spoke about the non-functional overreaching and overtraining. So don't overdo it. Keep a lid on things. And then I opened up with the individual differences, how everybody responds differently. For instance, a good number of years back now, gosh, it must be about almost 24 years ago, something like that, I was working with Jonathan Wright at the time that he was trying for a gold medal in Comrades. And he had an incredible capacity to handle training. 240, 250 kilometers a week was standard. We'd do a 30K run in the morning and something else in the afternoon. And he could go 6, 7, 8 weeks at a time and just not get tired. I've got another runner that I work with right now. I can't eke him beyond 2 weeks. 2 weeks at 35 Ks and he's trash. And we've got to pull back and recover because everybody adapts differently. You have different capacities to adapt. And that's something that one must keep in mind. And you might want to have the adaptive capacity of Kipchoge, but if you're not born genetically to have it, you must work with what you've got. Okay, so we divide the training into different phases, if you like. So what we have here is this training load that I was talking about, and over here is one cycle of training, shown here as 3 weeks of hard training, and then the recovery week as the 4th week in this case. Most runners seem to work quite well, so you might fall in there, and that's why I'm saying 4 weeks and a week recovery. And recovery doesn't mean watching TV and lying in your bed doing nothing. Recovery is a reduction in the training load for the week. And if you are, say, doing 60 Ks a week, a recovery week would be, say, 40 Ks a week. So it's a pullback. If you're doing 2 or 3 hard sessions a week, you do 1 hard session a week. If you're doing a 35K training run, a standard long run of the week, if you're a marathon runner, if you're a 20K runner, and you're doing 15 or 18 Ks, a little bit less. So you reduce the amount of stress. So that's what that week is over there. That's the what I was talking about with Jonathan Wright being able to go 7, 8 weeks at a time, and my other runner sitting over here with 2 weeks at a time. But each one of these weeks, each one of those bars is in turn divided into its own little cycle. And that is an easy day followed by a hard day, easy day, hard day, easy day, hard day, hard day. So gone are the days of the 60s and 50s where every day was a hard day of training for the elite runners, and it was a survival of those who could handle it. The best training responses happen when you train hard one day and then the next day there's some recovery. So the recovery run, again, depends on who you are and what you are. For one runner, it might be an 8K job. For Jonathan Wright, it was a 20K easy one run a day or something like that. So I know I'm saying it over and over again, but I do want to stress the point that when you look at your programs, you need to think about yourself and not what somebody else is doing in the club or something like that. So this is the pattern that I was talking about. So this is our performance over here, and let's say this is our starting point over there. So now you train and you make yourself a little bit tight in the legs, and so your performance would actually be dropping off. This is now the functional overreaching. At this point, you pull back on the training load, so you're training less now. This is like that 4th week, 3rd or 4th week that I showed you now. And then you improve as your legs recover and the fatigue goes away and the muscle cells are repaired and all that sort of stuff happens. And then you train hard again and you drive it down and then you pull back. And look what happens. As you go through the cycle, you end up better than what you were before. On the right here, we have an athlete that is doing it all wrong. So they train hard, and they might have heard about the recovery, so they do ease off, and then they train hard, and they ease off, and they train hard, and they ease off. But they've got the ratios all wrong. And instead of getting better over here, they're getting worse and worse over there, until over here, they're going to be on the verge of being overtrained. So it's hard, pull back, and so on. So now you also got to be realistic about your goals and choose your goals carefully. If you currently have a previous half marathon time of 2 hours, don't think you're going to suddenly go out and run it in 1.5 hours or something like that. If you previously got an Ocean's best time of 5.5 hours, don't just say, oh, I think I'll go for 4.5 hours on the day. You must choose carefully what time you are capable of. And when I work with an athlete, we decide beforehand on what a goal might be. So I'm just going to talk you through something that you can then apply to yourselves. So the first thing is, when you're setting your goal, be realistic. So realize who you are. And it gets very complicated. There's no easy rule. So if you take Bruce Fordyce from the past, he could probably jog 50 Ks a week and still run a silver medal in Oceans. There are other runners who will train 140 Ks a week and battle still to get a silver medal time. And once again, it's because who you chose as your parents. How genetically gifted are you? So you must be realistic. And your other times that you run, your marathon and so on, will help guide you, as you'll see on that. So keep your ability. And also, how hard are you prepared to train? So you might be capable of running that time that you want, but you've got to appreciate that to run it might require a lot more training ultimately than what you're currently doing. So let's just say you currently run 50 Ks a week, and you've got a training goal, and you are genetically gifted enough to get to it, but it's going to need 140 Ks a week. So then you must be prepared to train 140 Ks a week. I sometimes have runners coming to me like, oh, can you coach me, whatever? Yeah, sure I can. And then, what is your goal? No, they tell me what their goal is. And so, okay, we start talking about the training program, and then they start telling me how the training program must work. So Monday, I like to run with my friend Joe. So, I don't want to interfere with that run. And then Tuesday, that's the day I go and fetch, it's my time to, my duty day to go and fetch the kids from school. So please don't do anything with my Tuesday. Wednesday is the club time trial night, and I really enjoy socializing with the other runners. That's one of the reasons I run, and I love it. And so, I want to keep my time trial. And so they go on, and you say, well, hang on a minute, you've come to me for coaching, but you're not prepared to change anything. So, when you decide on your goals, even though you might be capable of it, you've got to realize it's just not going to happen out of thin air and just be magical, and now because you've got a coach or because you are trying to apply some scientific principles to your own training program, it's just going to suddenly happen. You've got to be prepared to put in the work, and that'll come up again just now. Right, so let's just say we want to run a 5-hour Two Oceans Ultra. So there are some specific things that you need to have to be able to even have a remote possibility of doing that. So first of all, you'll need about a 3:30 marathon. So if you haven't got a 3:30 marathon, forget it. So I'll know that from this runner, okay, we need to target a 3:30. That's going to be an interim goal. But to run a 3:30 marathon, you need to run a half in about 1 hour 41. And to do that, you need to be able to do a 10K in 46 minutes. So instead of looking at immediately Oceans in 5 hours, we're now looking at what you need to do down here as your 10K. Because if you can't do that, you're not going to manage to get your 5-hour Oceans. So then the next step is, what are the various elements in the program that are going to be necessary to be able to do this? So we can break that down to say you're going to have to be able to do 400 meters on the track as an interval session. So that's when you repeat, you run a 400 hard, and you rest, and 400 hard, and you rest, and so on and so on. You're going to have to do about at least 12 of those in a session in about 1 minute 41. Then that will progress to 800s in 3:30, 3 minutes 30 seconds. Then 1200 meters, and then mile repeats, 1600 meters in about 7:20, 7:15, somewhere around there. So if you haven't got that speed, then you're not going to have the speed for this, which is your 8K time trial at 4 minutes 34 seconds a K. So the runner might start at, talking about building up, we might start at 3Ks at 5 minutes a K. Then we go 3Ks a little bit faster, 3Ks faster still, then 4Ks, 5Ks, 6Ks, and eventually we work our way towards 8Ks over a long period of time. It could be years sometimes, in 4:34. Then there's this thing called a tempo run, or I call it a tempo run. So that's a kind of a race pace run. For a marathon, you need to run that time. In the marathon, you'd need to run 20, 25 Ks at about 4:57 per K. And your easy runs would be about 5.5 minutes a K. Once you've got all that in place, you can go into Cape Town Marathon and guaranteed you'll run your 3:30 marathon. And if you've done your 3:30 marathon and you do your long training runs, guaranteed you'll run the 5 hours. It works all the time. Never fail. So it's as easy as that. In terms of this easy run, when I had on that program, hard, easy, if you get in, go and start, everybody Googles this and wikis that, and there's a lot of rubbish out there, so be careful. But you might see like an easy run, taking this example, of 5.5 minutes per kilometer. And you're currently running 6 minutes a K. You can't just suddenly go to the 5:30. Speaking to the same sort of thing that I was speaking about. You have to work your way there gradually. And then comes something else. If you run an easy run today, and you run an easy run tomorrow, then maybe you can run the easy run at 5:30 a K, as is stipulated there. But what happens if you have run your interval session today, or your time trial today, or something else that is hard today? Then tomorrow, 5:30 might be far too fast to be easy. So your legs must talk to you. That's the absolute best regulator you have, is what your legs feel like. And any runner that I've worked with will tell you how I'm constantly asking, how do your legs feel? Because that will tell me, I can get into their body that way, and that will tell me what they are feeling and how to adjust the training. So 5:30, when you're feeling great, might be the pace. But after something hard before it, 6 minutes might be more appropriate. Because easy is actually the main thing there, not the 5:30. The word easy is important. It must feel easy. You can't be a slave to the 5:30. So if you've done a hard run, you've done a long run, or whatever it might be, and your legs are not happy, and they feel like planks and they're cloddish, listen to the legs. That is good training. If you just persevere with forcing yourself to do the 5:30 a K, instead of it doing great stuff for you, you'll eventually drive yourself down into that non-functional overreaching and then overtraining, and you'll have constant dead legs and tired legs and so on. I have an expression that I use quite often to runners, and Kenneth over here will have heard it often. Don't run faster than the stipulated pace just because you can. Now, so often I'll tell a runner, okay, 8K threshold run at 3 minutes 20 seconds, quite a fast runner that I'm working with. 3 minutes 20 seconds a K. He comes back, oh, coach, did 3:05 a K. Am I happy? No, I'm not happy. Because if I wanted him to do 3:05 a K, I'd have asked for it. There's a time to do 3:05, and that's in his race. Every hard session isn't a race. It's a training session, guys. Kenneth used to always panic. You know, every training session, she had to reach this target time that was so important. But it is actually just a target time. If you don't get it today, it's not important. You try to get it, you gave it a good effort, you didn't get it, so what? You try again next time, and maybe you get it, maybe you don't. And if you don't, you try again. And so this process over here takes a long time. And something else I always say is, if every time you go out and run your time trial, if you run those club time trials, they're mostly 5Ks these days, but if you go and run your 5K time trial and every week you improve, it's impossible, because soon, I always say, you'll be the world record holder over 5Ks. Give it a couple of years and it's not going to happen. So it's a training process. So keep that in mind. When am I supposed to? 10 minutes ago. Right, so this is just an example of a training program that I don't expect you to be able to read. It's just an excerpt from what is on the Two Oceans website. But it serves to illustrate what I was talking about. which is the red is a hard session. That's a continuous, long, fast run, what a lot of people call a time trial. This over here is an interval session. That's when you run 400 hard, 400 a short recovery, or 800 hard, a short recovery, and so on. So hard, easy over here, hard, easy, hard. That's sort of like a little, sort of slightly pink salmon color. It's a hard session. Green is a hill session, so that's hard, easy. Time trial thing, hard, easy, hard. So you can see how it's peppered with this hard, easy approach. This is the 21K program. Yeah, 21K program. And so you can see the distances are quite low compared to what's going to be next with the 56K program. But exactly the same principles you will see very clearly when I move to the next slide. It's exactly the same principles that apply. It's just the distances that vary. So this is the 56K program. Talking about the distances that vary. So over here I've got 45Ks as a long training run for this coming weekend. Those guys who are doing the 56. Who's doing the 56, by the way? So quite a fair scattering of you. So 45Ks this weekend. Then something that I'll speak to over here, and then 48Ks, and then this run again, and then tapering off down to Oceans over here. So I've got 45 and 48 as the two longest run leading up to Oceans. Out there, that 48 would be a little bit further if I knew how you're responding and all the rest. Bear in mind you've got 56 Ks to go. And it doesn't matter if you're a slow runner. So I already heard murmurings when I said 50, and that was like probably mutterings about is he mad. It doesn't matter whether you're going to win this thing and run 303 or 304, or whether you're going to be the last across the finish line. You still have 56 kilometers to finish that day. And so, yes, somebody who's going to win the race and does a 50K training run, they're going to finish that run in 3 hours, 10 minutes, something like that, and in the showers and change. You're still going to be out on the road. So the person who's trying just to finish Oceans and is going to be running at whatever that speed is per K, is probably about 7 minutes a K or something, I'm not sure. So you do your 50K training run, you're going to be on the road for hours and hours. And it doesn't kind of intuitively make sense that, hang on, I'm a slow runner, and I'm on the road training for longer than the elite runner. So at one level, yes, I understand it. But you've got to get your head around the fact that you still have 56 Ks to go. And if your longest training run has only been 30 Ks, and you've got 26 short to get through on the race day, you're going to suffer. And you're not going to get the time that you wanted. These long runs are your passport to success. They build resistance to fatigue. So right now, if you had to go out and run at your normal training pace, be it 4 minutes a K, 5 minutes a K, 6 minutes a K, whatever it is, it's going to feel easy. But you keep going, and if I go, you still are going 2 hours later, and I go to now, how does it feel? You're going to tell me it's feeling a lot harder than what it did when you started. And another hour in, it's harder still. So the longer this race goes on, or this training run goes on, the same speed starts feeling harder and harder and harder. And that is because of lots of physiological things that are happening, and it's driven by the duration and the distance and so on. And so you have to include in your training runs things that are long enough that you can adapt to that and build what I call a resistance to fatigue. So you don't just plummet over the cliff with how you feel in the later stages of the race. The other thing that you'll see here is I don't have them every week. Now, classically in the old days, if you look at the training programs from the 70s and the 80s of comrades, for instance, people, especially the faster runners, the gold medal type runners, they'd be going out and doing a 60K run this week, and a 55 the next week, and a 60K the next week. It was just every weekend there was yet another long run. So yes, you would argue, well, isn't that doing exactly what you said about building resistance to fatigue? It is to a degree, but doing it every week doesn't allow enough recovery time. So you're starting that downhill spiral that I was talking about. So you need a gap in between. So just doing these long runs every single week just actually starts making you slower and slower as you head towards being overtrained. So putting them every second week, like over here, gets away from that. It gives you enough recovery. And then in between, over here, this is you can't read it, but this is a faster paced, shorter long run. If that shorter long run sounds funny, but you as runners will know what I mean. So instead of doing 45, that's like a 27 or 30 or something like that. And it's done faster. So maintaining some leg speed. You don't want to just get yourself slower and slower and slower as you get more and more tired. So you put this shorter run in between, which serves the purpose of allowing some recovery, and at the same time has the added benefit that you can run faster, better mimicking what you're going to do on race day. And then as you go towards the end of the training schedule for the race over here, then of course you cut back even more. So the last long run over here is 1 to 3 weeks before Oceans. And I do exactly the same thing before Comrades. Even these very long runs, I'll have the last long run before, about 3 weeks before. Now I know a lot of people do 5 weeks before, 4 weeks, and then that's, yeah, so you do 5 weeks before, and you have a fantastic long training run, and then you have an absolutely lousy Comrades. We jump into Comrades for a moment. You have a lousy Comrades, and then you come and say to me, you know, I just don't understand. I ran my 65k training run, and I didn't have much rest along the way, and the pace at which I had done it, I should easily have run 8 hours. But I bombed out and I ran 9 hours. Why? Because your long training run of 5 weeks, you know how untrained you can get in 5 weeks? You lose that very, very quickly. On the other hand, people say to me, 3 weeks before, oh my gosh, I'm going to be tired going into the race. Rubbish. If you've done this properly, you will not be tired. So if you've done it how I first said, which was improper, if that's a word, improperly, where you've gone 20 Ks, 30 Ks, 55 Ks, well, yeah, then you are going to be tired and you can't do it 3 weeks beforehand. But if you've built up systematically, like over the year, from being race ready for Bay to Bay, say, in January, 30 Ks, then you've gone 35, then you've gone 40, then you've done a marathon, say, 42, then you've done a 45, then you've done a 50, then you've done a 55, and you built up every second week like that until you get to 65 Ks. 65 Ks is as easy as 30 Ks might be now. It's a long day on the road. Think of this going to a hike on the mountain for 6 hours, or whatever it might be. Don't think of it as like 65 Ks, or in this case, 48 Ks or something like that. That's such a long way to run. Think of it like it's a day out. And take like, get family and friends to come and give you seconding and have a party afterwards or something like that. But turn it into an event rather than a chore. And as I say, if you can't recover in 3 weeks from a 60k training run, 65k training run prior to Comrades, well, then you just haven't done the build-up properly. I've experimented with 2 weeks. It doesn't work. That's not quite enough. They do go into the race tired. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and 5 weeks. And I've tried that on hundreds of runners, from gold medalists to people trying to finish. And I promise you, the 3 weeks works. The other thing over here is you'll see that I've got a light training run the day before. Now, a lot of people tend to do absolutely nothing the day before, and I think that is a big mistake. If you're training regularly, your body is used to that, and you get very sluggish after a day of doing nothing. So you go the day before and do an easy jog, a couple of little sort of faster bits. So you're jogging at your normal speed, and then you'll pick up. It's kind of like, think about an underpowered car where you put your foot flat on the accelerator on a bit of a hill and it slowly picks up speed. Do that. You're running along and you just gradually speed up over about 30 seconds to a minute, and then you get off the accelerator and you cruise back down to your speed. And then you pick it up again and then you slow it down. You pick it up and you slow it down. Those are called surges or strides. And it just kind of keeps the legs happy, to be non-scientific. If you don't, you go to the start line feeling sluggish and heavy, and the legs just often don't want to work. Incidentally, if you do these hard sessions like intervals and time trials and things, try and do the same thing of not having a rest day before one of those sessions. There seems to be a huge correlation between incidents of injury when doing those sessions where you come off a 0 day the day before versus an easy jog of whatever the day before. So if I've got a run that's training only 4 days or 5 days a week, the 0 days don't come in before the hard days. It'll be a hard day, then a 0 day, then an easy day, and then a hard day, something like that. So go in with your legs having done something. Then I was going to go on to trying to predict your time and so how you should pace, but I think we probably coming to end of time. 5 minutes. Okay, so he who is in charge has set up in 5 minutes. Okay, so that is a crude figure of what the course looks like. So very flat for the first half, as you all know, and then you've got Chapman's, and then you've got Constantia. And with Constantia, you've got that horrible little pickup in the last K especially. So there's absolutely no way that you're going to run this and this as fast as you're running this flat section here. So normally, if you're running a flat race, I would talk to you and say that you should try and run an even pace throughout. That doesn't work too well in oceans. You have to put a little bit in the bank, so to speak, to account for the slowdown that's going to happen on those hills. So how do you do this? Okay, so once again, we work out a realistic finishing time, and then we determine the pace for a flat race, and then we allow some time to be lost on the hills, and that's going to result in a controlled, faster first half. So let's break that down. So first of all, we need to have our realistic finishing time. So there's a direct relationship between your oceans time and your marathon time, as I showed you half an hour ago. So if you want to run oceans in 4 hours or so, you better be able to run a marathon in under 3 hours. So probably about a 250, 255, somewhere around there. If you want to do 4.5 hour oceans, you're going to have to be somewhere about 3 hours, 5-10 minutes, something like that. 5 hours, you need a 3.5 hour marathon, as we spoke about before. 1 to 6 hours, you need 4 hours 10, and you want to get the cutoff in time, you need a 5 hour marathon. So you need to work out what your likely oceans time is going to be. And a little formula that works quite well is to take your marathon time and multiply it by 1.437. That comes along from having I just chucked in lots of finishing results, recent marathon times and oceans, and that is the figure that came out. You obviously can round it off to 1.44 or something like that. And generally it works very, very well. It assumes, of course, that you've done the right training. So if you're under-trained with terms of distance and long runs and all that, then it's not going to work. But, and also don't take a downhill race like Kango and use that to extrapolate. Okay, you've got to be honest about it. So you choose a realistic marathon. Multiplied by 1.437. So let's just say you have a 3.5 hour marathon. That's 3.5 hours, of course, 3.5. 3.5 multiplied by 1.437 gives you a realistic finishing time, if you've done the homework, of 5 hours for oceans. Right, so now we have to work out the speed for a flat race. So 5 hours is 300 minutes. The race distance is 56 Ks. And so the average pace for that is going to be 5:20 per K. Okay, now, there's approximately 12 significant uphill kilometers, Chapman's Peak and Constantia Neck. I know there's some other little ones as well, but we're worrying about the significant ones. So there's 12, and you've got to multiply that by the time you can run per kilometer up a hill. So I've got it in red to highlight the fact that everybody, once again, is different. And so you get some good hill climbers and some poor hill climbers. So you hopefully have run hills in your training. If you haven't, you better. And that goes for the half marathon too. There's some quite big hills in the half marathon. Get used to running hills and running downhills. So get over, do Chapman's Peak, do Seikabossi, do neck to neck and all those things. Run the hills. And when you do so, you'll see what you're likely to be able to sustain for uphills. So maybe you decide that you can sustain 5 minutes, 50 seconds, relatively comfortable up a hill. So you'll say 12 multiplied by 5 minutes, 50 seconds. So that's 70 minutes of uphill running. There's 5Ks of significant down, and I know that doesn't include the downs coming down past Bosch and so on, but often your legs are so stuffed by that point that you can't make use of those downs anyway. So I'm leaving them out. So the significant down is down Chapman's Peak. So let's just say this runner says I can run comfortably at 5:05 down Chapman's. Be careful not to go flying down there. If you can do 5:05, fine. If you can do 4:55 but are really stretched doing it, don't. Because by the time you get to the bottom of Chapman's and into Hart Bay, your legs are going to die 1,000 deaths and they're not going to come back. So rather get to the bottom of Chapman's Peak, maybe even a minute slower than what you otherwise could, but with intact legs. So right, 5Ks at 5:05 a K, that's 25.5 minutes. So in total, we have 95 minutes and 30 seconds for this 12 plus 5, 17 kilometers. So 56 total race distance minus the 17 Ks, there's 39 Ks unaccounted for in this calculation so far. Right, going back to our 5 hours that we want, 300 minutes minus the 95 for the hills. So 300 minus 95.5 minutes gives you 204 minutes and 30 seconds. So the time, 204.30 divided by those 39 Ks. So 204 divided by 39 gives you 5 minutes, 14 seconds a K. That is the pace that you should try and aim for the flatter section from the start through to the beginning of Chapman's Peak. Or being in mind is the odd little hill here and there, but just talking averages. So you'll see what comes out is just modestly faster than a mean average pace if you worked it out that way. So that puts 7 seconds or so in the bag to account for the hills. And generally it works very well. So at that point, I will say thank you very much. And I think questions are at the end, is that right? What do you prefer? Okay, so...
It was amazing. He's also known as Coach A on the 3rd floor. He's getting us through our races, and as per the description here, I don't think I'll make it up the hill or down the hill, but I'm trying. Are there any questions from the audience for Professor Bosch?
Thanks, Prof. Question that I have is, if like August is coming up now, and I see that you've got those training runs, what kind of impact would that be if you're doing the August?
Doing
Not like a long run, the weekend.
If you're doing a cycle tour.
Yeah, you're doing the cycle too. So
right. Well, hopefully you've been doing your running as well.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually quite a difficult balance. I coach a couple of runners who do cycle, and it certainly makes your legs tired for some of the runs. Like so much, you adapt to it. So if you've been training on the bike diligently and you've been training on your running diligently, it doesn't actually interfere that much. So if you are only a runner, you should be able to get pretty close to those times with your bike training as well. Even though you might have a long bike ride on a Saturday and then you've got to do but this August is coming now on Sunday, so you're a bit late.
The question was, this weekend you said 45
Sorry.
Ks.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're doing the August 109
Oh, I thought the impact of the, yeah, okay.
so you're not going to do 45 Ks on Saturday.
Okay,
So you hear that?
yeah, okay, so I didn't quite get the question quite right. So as I'm now understanding the question, if you're doing the August now this Sunday and I've got a 45K run down there, that obviously conflicts. That's where if I was working with you, we would have done it differently. The 45K run would have been at a different spot. It would have been last week. you had a question?
Yes. This is about when you go to the gym. Sorry, just get mine. It's when you go to the gym. It's the what is this?
Sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
I want to ask at the gym, and then if you are a runner, is what is that machine that I don't like? The treadmill. The treadmill. Is it safe for a runner or is it not safe? I hear that it's not safe for the runner, but I want to know if it's safe. I don't like to go to it because the last time they said it's not safe.
Well, what's not safe?
The treadmill.
Yeah, a lot of runners use a treadmill. I don't understand what would not be safe. It's not quite the same as on the road. So, I mean, if that refers to, you know, does it mimic the road? If safe means falling off the thing, I'm not sure.
It's not falling off of it. But so, actually, I am going for the boat cruise for the whole week next week. And Sunday I must come back. I'm coming back Friday, and Sunday we are doing the West Coast.
Yeah.
And I'm aiming for 30. So how safe am I if I'm going to be on the treadmill while I'm in the boat?
You definitely need to get on the treadmill, yeah.
I must.
Yeah.
For how long?
Same as in the road. I had a runner in Johannesburg do a 40k training run on the treadmill last weekend. It just takes a bit of dedication and commitment.
Just to side check, you perhaps have a pace calculator for combat, like the one that you just recently showed us.
Yes, I do. So you can contact, we'll probably have a talk like this before Comrade.
They had 1 2 weeks ago, but I never thought about it the way you graphically explained it.
So you just wait for the mic. I can't hear down there.
I'm saying there was one talk show, whatever you call it, 2 weeks ago about combat, but it didn't apply in my mind the way you graphically showed the calculation of your average speed on your two oceans.
Oh,
So
wow.
I wanted to know if you can maybe share with us the combat pace calculator.
Not exactly. It's a table. It's a big
Yes,
table, which I don't have with me immediately right now. But it allows you to look at your total training kilometrage leading up to Comrades, and your best recent marathon time, or 50k time, or 56k time, and you can go into this table and it'll predict what you are likely to be able to run for Comrades, and it's very, very good. And it's very useful because then it once again allows you to set a realistic goal and say, okay, I must be running at 6 minutes a K. So don't go off at 5 minutes a K. So it's very worthwhile now. But watch the space. I'm sure we might have a Comrades talk.
Thank you.
Last question?
Hello, thank you for the talk, it was fascinating. I've been training on a plan, and the plan is, like you said, like the 1970s, 80s plan, where every weekend is a long run. Continue doing it, and I've been in and out of injury with my foot, I think because of this, and so I was really interested in the fact that you were breaking those long runs down and having a sort of, not a rest period, but you were slowing down. I did miss how you were pacing that, so obviously the long runs again, we're doing now 45 this weekend. Then what does it go down to then and then back up? I was just fascinated in that kind of pacing.
That program is on the Two Oceans website. So for this weekend it's 45, then there's a shorter one following weekend, and then 48 is the longest one prior to the race itself. After that it goes down.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll make sure I cover that.
But there again, you know, if you have done quite a lot of long runs, you can tweak that a little bit, and if you've got enough background, you could go a little bit more this weekend and turn the 48 into 50, and it'll help you that little bit more in
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Donnie is a general practitioner. He practices in Johannesburg, so we flew him down specifically to speak to your lovely faces today. He received his MBCHB degree in 2007 from the University of Pretoria and has been practicing medicine since. Dr. Fick currently runs his own successful practice under the Medicross banner and specializes as a GP. We all know that Medicross offers various GP services by well-experienced medical practitioners, and these medical practitioners can also offer services in aesthetic treatments as well as diabetes and hypertension management. Dr. Fick is also selected as a SSISA brand ambassador. He has been selected for his advocacy in the use of physical activity to achieve optimal physical and mental health outcomes. So please put your hands together and welcome Dr. Fick.
So thank you for having me in Cape Town. Prof has given us some stats on how fast you need to run. I've been quite intimidated by that. My claim to fame as to why I'm a runner is because I run after my wife. She's much faster than I am, so I have to keep the pace up with her. But he was alluding to paces, and we want to talk about something specific tonight. There is no pace fast enough where you can outrun the sun. There is no sub-sunburn pace. So my name is Donnie Fick. I'm a general practitioner in Johannesburg. I'm also a key opinion leader for L'Oreal. We involved in a lot of research around skin pathologies and how we educate people around that, how we manage that. And tonight I get the privilege of talking about one of my passions, which is sun damage and photo protection. Also, I am a runner. That photo was taken in 1998, I think, at the first ever Two Oceans 21K. I think that is correct, right? I was a lot younger, a lot thinner, but I still wear pink vests, so that's important. So the Two Oceans Ultra Marathon and the Two Oceans Marathon is up there with the most iconic marathons in the world. By a show of hands, who's ever run the Tokyo Marathon here? No one? New York? New York, we've got someone from New York, Chicago, Boston, Berlin, London. Who's run the Two Oceans Marathon? So what we're going to talk about tonight is the sun, and there's something called the UV index. Now what that is the ultraviolet index is a tool to measure how much damaging ultraviolet sun rays is at a particular place at a particular time. It's measured as a UV index of 1 to 2 is low, 3 to 5 is medium, 6 to 7 is high, 8 to 10 is very high, and 11 is extremely high. So the WHO guidelines say anything of a UVI index above 8 means you should seek shade immediately, sunscreen and hats are a must. Now if you look at those iconic marathons, Tokyo has an average UV index of 6 to 8, Berlin 7 to 8, New York 7 to 8, London 7 to 8, Johannesburg around 12 and never less than 10. And today in Cape Town the UV index was 10. You'd never believe that because it was cloudy, but believe me, there's some clever scientists that know what they're talking about, so we're going to believe them. So not only is the Two Oceans the most iconic, most beautiful marathon in the world, it's also the most damaging in terms of UV and ultraviolet rays. So that's something to take into consideration. What are ultraviolet rays? For the simplicity of tonight's talk, we're only going to talk about UVA and UVB. UVA, or ultraviolet A rays, comprise of 95% of the rays that filter down from the sun to planet Earth. These are the ones that are deeper penetrating. These are the ones that have gone under the radar for a very long time. They penetrate through the epidermis into the dermis, and it causes a few things that none of us here want. Aging, who wants to age? No one, exactly. Like we don't want wrinkles. I always have this picture of Bruce Fordyce in my mind and wonder, has he ever worn sunscreen during the conference? Does anyone know? Maybe he was prone to some of that UVA aging as well. It also causes hyperpigmentation and most importantly, cellular damage, which could lead to cancer. Then there's UVB, which accounts for about 5% of the rays that come from the sun, and simply put, that causes burning. So to simplify it, UVA causes aging, UVB causes burning. So as I said, I want to place a particular focus on the UVA rays. Why? Because no one, up until a couple of years ago, took this very seriously, and now more science and more data is coming out that this is actually the dangerous one. This is the one that you should actually protect yourself from. Why? It's deeper penetrating. So that's where it really affects the cellular structures, causes mutations within your DNA, and can lead to cancer. And also, based on the title of my talk, is you can't outrun UVA rays. It penetrates through clouds, windows, clothing, all sorts of things. So there's this myth that if I go out running early in the morning when the sun's not out or it's overcast, you're still at risk of UVA rays. So that's why photo protection or sunscreen is so important. As I said earlier, even if it's shady, overcast, even if you're not in the direct sunlight when training, these deep penetrating UVA rays still reach the skin and cause damage. So that's some of the myths that we want to bust later on tonight. So South Africa, unfortunately, is Sun City. Where I come from, that's a resort close to Johannesburg, but it's also the skin cancer capital of the world. Now, an interesting fact, and we were chatting with Prof about this earlier, there's no scientific evidence or papers yet, but since the end of COVID, South Africa's experienced an increase of 23% when it comes to road running. That means people have gone out into the road more often for their mental health reasons, for physical reasons, for their beautiful COVID bodies that we've all put on. We've all needed to find a way of getting rid of it. In the same time, parallel to that, South Africa's overtaken Australia as the skin cancer capital of the world. Now, we know that in South Africa we've got harsh sunlight. As runners, as athletes, as people in South Africa, we spend a lot of time in the sun. There's no evidence to prove that that's why those two numbers have correlated, but there's some interesting studies that we can do in the future. And that's why nights like tonight with education, awareness, and early detection is so important. So I was fortunate enough to go to Dubai last week on a skincare conference, and one of my friends, Dr. Taryn Jacobs, she's a leader in skincare, especially when it comes to cancer, screenshotted this slide and put it on Instagram. And it's very interesting to me that in Europe, the most common cancer that they diagnose now is of a skin origin. It's not breast cancer. It's not prostate cancer. It's far, I don't know if you can see the numbers there, far head and shoulders above every other cancer. The most common cancer in Europe diagnosed today is of a skin origin. So there's some good news. That's some doom and gloom, but there's some good news that it's 100% important, but also 100% preventable. And that, my friends, is the solution. Daily sunscreen or daily photo protection. What if I were to tell you there was a magic potion out there that would rapidly reduce your risk of skin cancer? Who would take it? The question is, who actually does take it? Very few people, right? If I were to like put out a post or a newsletter saying there was something that would rapidly reduce your risk of lung cancer, breast cancer, or prostate cancer, I can guarantee you the line would be out the door for people to use that. We do have that magic potion. We do have a workable solution available to us, and that's called daily sunscreen or daily photo protection. So to talk about skin cancers, just very lightly and superficially, there are three main types: squamous cell carcinoma, basal cell carcinoma, and then the big bad wolf of malignant melanoma. That is arguably one of the most aggressive tumors that you can get. The good news is if detected early, it doesn't have such a life sentence. So we know that the lighter Fitzpatrick skin types, or the paler skins, are more at risk. If you've got a family history of skin cancer, you are more at risk. And the more moles you have in your body is a risk as well. So there's a quick guideline. It's called the ABCDEs of when looking at a mole. You can do this at home as well. A is for asymmetry. That's a melanoma on the screen there. If your mole's asymmetrical, if you draw a line through the middle of it and it doesn't mirror the other side, please go and see a health practitioner. If B is for border, if the border is irregular, you're in a little bit of trouble, so please go and consult someone about that as well. C is for color. If the color is not uniform and there's different colors in your mole, that is suspicious and you should get it checked out. D is for diameter. Anything above 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter should be looked at. And E is for evolution. And we often get told that if your mole is evolving or changing, you should please go and see someone about that. So we're here today to talk about sun protection, skin cancer, the damages of that. But we also want to say how this applies to runners, because we're all going to be training for the Two Oceans Marathon. We know that the sun rays in South Africa are damaging. We do advocate the use of daily photo protection and sunscreen, but there's always a lot of questions about it. Many people here don't wear sunscreen, maybe not in this room, but in the country don't. Can we get a show of hands of who actually uses sunscreen on a run? That's very good. Who uses sunscreen when they're not running? So we've got a very compliant audience here. Unfortunately, the rest, that doesn't really translate to the rest of South Africa. So tonight, just want to bust a few myths around sunscreen and running, and then we'll leave you to go and have a good evening. Apparently, it's First Thursday, so apparently some people, like my friends over there, want to go and have a drink. So the first myth we need to bust is, I only need to wear sunscreen if the sun is shining. As alluded to earlier, those UVA rays are damaging. They penetrate through clouds. On a cloudy day like we had today in Cape Town, if it was raining, you still need to put your sunscreen on because you're still at risk of those UVA rays. So please don't say, I only wear sunscreen when I'm going to the cricket, the rugby, or when the sun's out. Sunscreen is only for people with fair skin. I have enough melanin and therefore never sunburn. I was like that as a teenager. I was like, my skin's not fair. I don't need sunscreen. That is a myth as well. Yes, even though the risk of cancer is higher in the fairer skins, you don't want to put yourself at risk. And as alluded to earlier, it's not just the cancers we worry about. We don't want the wrinkles, we don't want the aging, and we don't want the hyperpigmentation. I was chatting to Crystal earlier, and this is one of her biggest pet hates about sunscreen when running. I don't like the way it runs down my face and burns my eyes. And I totally agree. You should run, and you should run fast, and your sunscreen shouldn't run with you. But I'm proud to tell you today that there are newer formulations out there that don't do that. I have tried every sunscreen on the market. I can tell you lots of them don't run. If you want to come and chat to me afterwards about a few brands that you can use, I'm more than welcome to engage with you. But there are sunscreens out there that don't run into your face, that are water, sand, and sweat resistant and will not run into your eyes. This is my all-time favorite. I love Instagram. Lots of people are like, I don't want to wear sunscreen because of that ugly white cast it leaves on my face. It looks bad in running photos, and we only run for Instagram, so we can't do that. Also, newer formulations these days don't leave that white cast. If you use molecules that have things like Mexerol 400 in it, they won't leave the white cast. You'll still look great on those Instagram photos, and you won't need a filter. This is very important, especially in practice. Lots of patients come up to me and they're like, we've seen a lot about vitamin D. If I have low vitamin D levels, I'm going to have osteoporosis when I'm older. I'm also going to feel really tired. Therefore, I'm not going to use sunscreen because I don't want to fracture my pelvis when I'm 65. I'm glad to tell you that that is also a myth. There is no sunscreen that prevents vitamin D absorption. Lots of people come up to me and like, Donnie, I'm not going to use sunscreen. Since I've used it, it's clogged my pores. It gives me acne. I don't want to use it because I still want to look good on a date after the run for those coffee shop runners out there. That's important. There are sunscreens that have oil control. There is a difference between mineral or chemical sunscreens. The mineral sunscreens are friendlier to your face. They don't clog your pores as much, and they won't cause acne. So important points when choosing a sunscreen. SPF 50 and above. However, SPF as a single parameter is not enough. SPF is only a measure of how well a sunscreen will protect you from UVB rays or burning. And my one take-home point tonight, if you forget everything else I said, besides the fact that I wore a pink shirt in the 90s, is that you need to protect yourself from UVA rays. Protection against UVA and UVB rays are very important. It's a personal preference between chemical or mineral filters or sunscreens. Lots of dermatologists prefer the mineral type. As I said, it's better for your sensitive skin, causes less acne. And also please note that sunscreens themselves have a shelf life. Just because you've had one from 2006 doesn't mean it's still going to work today. Please update it regularly. There's a very interesting thing. If you turn the back of any cream product around, it will tell you, there'll be like a cream container with like 12 m or 6 m in. I don't know if you've noticed it. That's how long you have to use from opening that bottle before it expires. So please take a look at that. And also, it is a sunscreen, but please keep it out of the sun as well. It does lose a bit of its chemical properties when you do that. And reapply every 2 hours when you're in direct sunlight. So that means if you are going to be running this year's Two Oceans 56, if it is at all practical, at some of the watering points, please carry your sunscreen with you. They do come in formulations small enough to fit into your moon bag, have your family member wait for you. I think it's more important than a goo, and the nutritionist will come after me when I say that, but you can cramp on a marathon, you just don't want to get like sunburn or cancer on a marathon. So tell them one goo and one sunscreen, and that should get you through to Oceans in a very good way. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for allowing Thank you so much for allowing me to be here, and I look forward to seeing you at the Two Oceans. I look forward to seeing you putting on your sunscreen at the 18K watering point as well.
Thank you, fantastic. Thank you very much, Dr. Fick, for a very educational talk on sun protection, because it's something that I myself forget to do on a daily basis. Yeah, please don't. Are there any questions from the audience for Dr. Fick about sun protection and sun care? Skin care, sorry. On the side.
Yes.
But sorry ma'am, we just want to record all the questions as well, yeah.
Thank you, very interesting. Do you need a screen for a computer screen?
That's a very interesting question because there's this whole talk about our blue. Oh, sorry, we need to record. This is on TV. Apparently, yes. So there's those blue light rays that come from your computer screen. We're going to go with yes, and this is why daily photo protection is important. So lots of people are like, I work in an office, I therefore don't need sunscreen. Yes, you do, because that is still an ultraviolet rays that comes from your computer screen. We tell people only apply it once a day and not every 2 hours as if you were in direct sunlight. Yes. Two questions. Do you apply it to your whole body before you put the jacket on? But yeah. So, and it comes down to that sunscreens in direct sunlight only really have efficacy for 2 hours. Yeah. Yeah. So when Prof asked me why I run so slow, is because after every 2 hours I have to stop for 10 minutes, reapply the sunscreen, and then continue. And that's why my marathon pace is not so good. But it comes down to, I know it's difficult and it's not practical, but reapplication of sunscreen every 2 hours is the gold standard. Yes, we can't get that right. The sad news is that if you have 5 severe sunburns in your life, it increases your risk of a melanoma by 15%. So this is why things like this is so important. Like if you do, please try and protect yourself. There are new clothes out on the market that have filters in them. Try some of those things. But it's not just about sunscreen. And I think this is where Australia's got it right, and we're still trying to learn from them. Wide brim hats, protective clothing. Try the most you can. Sunscreen is part of that, but it's not the only part.
Just a quick question on the more natural mineral sunblocks. Would they last longer and not expire as much, or?
I think they all got more or less a 12-month sort of shelf life. The mineral ones are the new range. They are the ones that we do prefer to use. They're more naturally occurring products. But yeah, I think hopefully, I mean, these sunblock tubes aren't big. You shouldn't, if one bottle lasts you 12 months, then you're clearly not using it enough. I would think is the take-home message.
Final question.
Please use it for the boat cruise. Please. Pack in lots of bottles, if that is the question.
No, listen, on a serious note, in the morning we train, let's say, we run at 5 o'clock. Before the sun comes out, we're already done. So this is, we train in the dark, and then we run in the sun. So are we safe running in the dark every time and we go and
Your risk is lower in the dark,
okay, yes. Okay.
but you're gonna need to wear that sunscreen when you're running in the light.
Well, it's fine. It's just I'm saying we usually train in the dark. But
Yeah.
every time, like we are going to run West Coast in the sun.
Yes.
We are going to run Two Oceans in the sun.
Yeah.
I'm running the Comrades in the sun. So we are safe, ne? But I'm thinking we are saving, I'm saving the sunscreen every time.
You're safe when you're wearing sunscreen, 100%.
Yeah. And then again, I hear you say we have to even wear the sunscreen even though we don't run.
Yes.
Why?
Because you're still in the sun every day. Whether were you in your car, when you're on that boat cruise, even if you're in your room, the UVA lights penetrate through the windows, it penetrates through your car windows, and it just increases your risk of aging, pigmentation, and skin cancer.
Oh, my excuse on that is I'm usually in the office. I don't go to the sun. I go to the sun lunchtime only.
Yeah, but we've got the computer lights as well.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Our last and final speaker is Associate Professor Dale Ray. Del Rey is the Director of Sleep Science and is a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Town within the Health Through Physical Activity, Lifestyle and Sport Research Center. Her research focuses on sleep and circadian rhythms, which means the body's 24-hour clock. She's particularly interested in how sleep is associated with health, disease, and obesity, and the relationship between sleep, the body clock, athletic, and workplace performance. So we've heard about training principles from Professor Bosch. We've heard about skincare while we are running from Dr. Fick. And the last thing I think we need to cover is really rest, sleep, and recovery. So over to you, Dale.
I'm really going to struggle to keep up with your energy and your enthusiasm. What a good talk. So thank you so much. I don't think I've ever been so captivated by a skin-related talk before. Awesome. So I'm Dale, and I'm going to be chatting to you about sleep. It's my favorite topic in the whole world. I'm completely and utterly obsessed with it. I absolutely love sleeping. I hate when I can't sleep, so I'm a champion sleeper for most of the time, until of course I'm not, which I think most of us can appreciate with. But I'm also really excited just to share a little bit why I think sleep is so important for a performance perspective, but actually much beyond that, because most of us that are sort of sitting here, we are athletic, all right, because we're choosing to do really cool big events, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we are like the people going to win the medals at the top end of the sort of the course. But nevertheless, our performance and our well-being and our ability to train and set new personal records, that's really important. And our ability to do it well and without being injured, actually, that's really important. And so for that reason, I think sleep's really important. In fact, I see it as your superpower, because really at the end of the day, what sleep is able to do, I think, is to support you in terms of your training and your nutrition and all your mental preparation and everything else that you want.
Move closer to the microphone.
So let's just jump in and let's look at why I think sleep is actually your superpower, specifically in terms of rest and recovery. And I noticed that we are counting down. It's a little bit less than 36 hours and 36 days and 13 minutes. Hours. I'm so tired. Sorry, it's been a hell of a day to go. But all is not lost, because in the amount of time that there is still to go, I was having a look at Andrew's training plans that he set out for you. We've still got a couple of big weeks to come, and so there's plenty of reason that we should really focus on our sleep and recovery in this time too. All right, so from an athletic perspective, I always say athletes, people that are taking part in sports, they know things well before the scientists do. We are always playing catch up. And so I love to hear what athletes think anecdotally. This is Nolan Hoffman. He's one of our top road cyclists. He won the cycle tour in 2018 and 2021. And in chatting to him, just in loose conversation after one of the races, he had no idea who I was, by the way, and he said no, he tries to sleep 8 to 10 hours per night, because that's when his body does his recovery. So that's pretty solid. If you're old enough like me, you might remember Maria Sharapova, who was a pretty good tennis player, and at that time she said that the only thing she does differently in preparation for big tournaments is to rest, and she referred to sleeping as her hobby, which I absolutely love. World's fastest man says sleep's important to him, and his words are that he needs to sleep so that the training that he does can be absorbed by his body. I love the way the non-scientific terms, it's perfect. And one of our most decorated swimmers in recent times, Michael Phelps, said that it's not just the quantity of sleep that matters, but it's the quality, and that is absolutely bang on, and that's really also what I want to share with you. And so professional sports teams are taking sleep seriously. I mean, can you believe it? This gentleman has a business as a sports sleep coach, and he's worked with a range of super impressive sports teams who have hired him specifically to help with their athletes to manage their sleep, to optimize performance. Because at the end of the day, we're looking for those small marginal gains to be a little bit better, and sleep is one of the things that we can rely on to do that. In fact, one of the top researchers in this field said that there's this like the new frontier in high performance athletics is this interface between sleep, recovery, and performance. And I think that that's the key, because most of us are not silly enough to constantly be sleep deprived and then expect to be able to perform well the next day. We will generally try and get some good sleep in the lead up to the race. but actually where we can really put the effort in, like we put the effort in with our actual training on the road, is put the effort in with your sleep as well to be able to support that training, and that's key. So I want to just spend 2 ticks just quickly thinking about the structure of sleep, because I'm not sure, but some of you probably wear some of these watches which are able to give you a little bit of feedback around your sleep, and I just want you to have a good idea of what they are feeding to you in terms of information, but also just what are you trying to achieve when you sleep in this apparent little black hole. So as scientists, we use a little device called a polysomnography, but essentially we're looking at the electrical activity in your brain, which gives us a really good idea if you're asleep or awake, and if you're asleep, what kind of sleep are you in. And the only way that we can get that information, by the way, is to have little electrodes on your brain, not on your brain, on your skull. You definitely cannot be wearing a watch on your wrist and hope that it can tell you what's happening in your brain. We might be getting there in future, and hopefully it's going to happen soon, but we definitely know where they're at the moment. So anyway, the short of it is that with that information, we can draw a little graph like this, and if you wear one of those smart watches, you'll see that it'll put out a little picture like this for you at the end of each sleep, which gives you an idea of the structure of your sleep. So you start out the sleep awake, and then you drop down into what's called non-REM, non-rapid eye movement sleep stage 1. That is a very light stage of sleep. It's that transition between being awake and being asleep. And if I tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, wake up, you'll go, no, I promise you, I was just lying here. I wasn't asleep yet. So it's easy to wake you up, and it's that weird state that you're not quite sure if you're awake or you're asleep. So it's not really good quality sleep because you're on your way down to the good stuff. We get to the good stuff in non-REM stage 2. And here, if I tap you on the shoulder and I say, hey, wake up, your brain will register that you've been disturbed, but you will keep on sleeping. So that's a good thing. And then you hit the really good stuff. That's non-REM stage 3, N3. That is your deep sleep, or we call it slow wave sleep. And here we can now have a party around you. We can vacuum clean, we can make lots of noise, and you generally will just be completely and utterly unconscious. And that's that really sought after deep sleep. And then you pop up and have a small cycle of what we call REM, rapid eye movement sleep. That's a little bit with the blue on it. And here your eyes are darting around the place. Your brain is super busy. It's actually like an awake brain. And you often do a lot of your dreaming, but luckily our muscles are paralyzed so that we can't move and act out what's happening in our heads. So that's cycling from stage 1, 2, 3, and then up into REM. That's called a sleep cycle. Normally lasts 90 to 100 minutes, and we have 5 or 6 of those during the course of the night. But the structure changes so that we do most of our deep sleep in the first third of the night, and then as we go through the night, we do more and more REM or deep sleep. But the important messages here is that your deep sleep is when your body does most of its physical repair and recovery. So you secrete a lot of hormones that are involved in your repairing. So your muscles desperately need that deep sleep so that you can adapt to the training sessions that you have done. And then when you do your REM sleep, by the way, might not seem that important for running, but it's actually critical. This is where you do lots of your emotional regulation, your psychological recovery. So from a mood stability perspective, REM sleep is absolutely critical. Actually, as a short aside, REM sleep is so important that they've shown that in animal studies, if you deprive the animals of REM sleep, they die. So we love REM sleep. And if you wake up feeling pretty unbalanced in the morning, sometimes it's because you haven't had enough REM. So it would seem to me that athletes should be good sleepers, right? Because you're training hard, you're fatigued and tired at the end of the day. And I think very often we do think, yeah, when you've had a great couple of training sessions, you just pass out, and it's that wonderful feeling at the end of the day where you can finally just go and lie down and recover. But the reality is actually that many athletes don't have great sleep. So this was a survey of elite rugby sevens, rugby union, and cricket players in Australia, and it observed that it looked like they were getting some good sleep, 7 hours 54, nearly 8 hours. That sounds good, right? But 38% of them were quite heavy snorers. And snoring, by the way, interferes with your sleep like no one else's business. Actually, it also interferes with the person who's trying to sleep next to you, but that's a different story. Unlucky for them. Just say earplugs. 50% of them actually had poor sleep quality, and 28% had excessive daytime sleepiness. So even athletes are not immune to having poor sleep, and so we should really pay attention to that. So why do athletes need to sleep? Well, there are a couple of things that happen when we sleep. As I've mentioned, when doing your slow wave or your deep sleep, your muscle is busy repairing. So lots of this protein synthesis takes place during the night, and you restock all of your energy stores so that you've got lots of energy ready to go again next time you train. There's a really important part related to your central nervous system that helps to make automated patterns, if you like, so that you become more, you do skills with more fluency. I can't find the right word that I want right now, but basically you can, the more that you sleep, those special skills get embedded, and then you don't sort of make mistakes, and you can do things in a more automated manner. But importantly for athletes, sleep's critical for your immune system. So very crudely, there's two parts of your immune system. In the daytime, when you're awake, like now, the part of your immune system that is active is the part that's defending you against germs that you're going to be breathing in right now. And that's useful, because we're all sitting here breathing in each other's germs. Yay. All right. When you go to bed, however, your immune system switches roles, and the part of your immune system that is active when you sleep goes and makes the little antibodies that you need to defend you against those germs, so that you're less likely to get sick. And it also trawls your body, by the way, looking for damaged and mutated cells and kills them. So it's got a really important anti-cancer role as well. So if you don't give your body enough time to sleep at nighttime, you're robbing your immune system of time that it needs to keep you healthy. And so there's some cool little studies that have been done to show what is the chances of becoming injured over the course of time if you don't have great sleep. So they measured sleep initially in a group of young athletes, and then they put them into groups, and then they watched them for a period of 21 months, and then they looked to see who became injured in that time. And essentially they could show that the athletes that were sleeping less than 8 hours were 1.7 times more likely to develop an injury compared to the longer sleeping athletes over the course of that experiment. And similarly, this used a similar kind of study where they measured people's sleep at baseline, and then they infected everybody with the rhinovirus, the common cold, and then they put them into quarantine, and they looked to see who was going to get sick. And they observed that the people that were the short sleepers, less than 5 hours, 5 and 6 hour sleepers or short sleepers, were far more likely to develop symptoms and to get ill compared to the longer sleepers. So from that perspective, we know that sleep is so important for your immune system. And as an athlete, there's nothing worse than training for a big event, making all of that sacrifice, and getting sick in the week before and you can't compete. That is not cool. And what you'll notice sometimes is that when you are skating on that edge of being a little bit underslept, have you ever noticed how you start to get like a funny little throat and you're like, oh, I'm going down. Warning sign, okay? That is your immune system battling to keep up. That is a massive sign that you need to catch up on some sleep before you do go down that slippery slope and get sick ahead of your event. So does more sleep improve physical performance? Because that would be another nice thing to know. If I sleep more, can I be a better athlete? And essentially this little study, it's a pilot study, it's in a small number of people, but it was a really interesting concept. These are people that are already sleeping not too short, 6 to 9 hours. That sounds pretty good. But they said to them, aim for 10 hours, aim for 10 hours for the next couple of weeks, and let's see what's happened. Lo and behold, these youngsters were actually able to increase their sleep by nearly 2 hours. So there's no ways you can increase your sleep unless you have a need for it, all right? If you want to create an insomnia pattern, put somebody in bed for 10 hours and tell them to try and sleep when their body only needs 6 hours. Okay, you will create a problem. So that firstly shows me that these young athletes needed a hell of a lot of sleep. And then they noticed that over the course of the study, when they lengthened their sleep, a whole lot of components that were related to their basketball performance improved, and also their mood improved too. And then the last little bit of science, and I promise you I won't do any more of that, is we look to see whether sleep deprivation affects recovery, because that's the key, right? We want to do a hard training session, we want to have good sleep, and we want to be able to recover so tomorrow we can go out and train again, or at least in 2 days' time we must be able to go full out so that we can get the best out of our training. So we looked at trained cyclists, and we gave them a high-intensity interval training session to do. It was hard. We had to have a special little bucket next to them because some of them really struggled to get through it without being sick. And then we said to them, okay, cool, now tonight you can either have your normal sleep or we're going to give you half of your normal sleep. And so we did the experiment twice so that we could do that. And what did we notice? When they had had a full night of sleep, following that high intensity interval session, they were fully recovered in terms of their performance. Well, 99% recovered in terms of their performance the next day, but when they'd had half of their sleep, they were only 95% recovered. So you might think, 95%, who's worried about that sort of 4 or 5%? But from a performance perspective, that makes quite a big difference. And you can imagine what happens over time if you're just constantly being nudged down by 4 or 5%, you're on your way to burnout. I can guarantee you that. Everybody always wants to know, how much sleep should we be getting? So these are the National Sleep Foundation guidelines around sleep. So you can see that our age groups, let's say we're somewhere between 18 and 64, very hopeful. The recommendations are that we should be sleeping 7 to 9 hours per night. That sounds like a lot of sleep, but I want to notice 2 things here. It's not 8 hours, okay? Everybody goes, oh yeah, I must sleep 8 hours. That's complete and utter rubbish. In fact, the range is somewhere between 6, because some people only need 6, and 10 or 11, because other people need 10 or 11. So there's actually a 4 to 5 hour range in what is appropriate to support good health, physical health, mental health, and to promote good performance as well. And so the trick is to figure out what is your sweet spot and how much sleep do you need. So I just really want to highlight that there's a massive range, but I'm also going to say this, athletes have a bigger sleep need when you're training than the average person. So if you're doing the miles, you are probably on the upper end of that, and you're going to struggle to feel okay if you're skating by on 7, I would imagine. I would be pretty surprised if you can do that and stay healthy and not get sick and not get injured. But more important than duration, we speak about sleep quality. And how do we measure quality? It's a bit difficult to measure, really, but there are a couple of things that are important. Sleep regularity is important. So this is a little picture which demonstrates a person's sleep patterns over a full week, and you can see they're very consistent. All you have to see is those blue bars are all about the same length. They're going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. That's a good regular sleep pattern, and we like that. This is an example of an irregular sleep pattern. Your body does not like that. Okay, you are sending extremely confusing signals to your body clock, and so we try to be as consistent as possible, as much as possible. Every now and then, you're going to go out and do something unusual or celebrate, or maybe you have to work a little bit late, and your sleep is going to go out the window. That's also absolutely fine. Your bodies are super resilient, and I would never stress about one night here or there, but for the most part, you want to try and be a little bit consistent without being overly inflexible. I don't think that's a great thing either. And then the last thing to note around quality is that we think that continual sleep is very, very important. So disrupted, broken sleep is terrible. You don't get the benefits that you deserve out of broken sleep. And this study showed that. They did 3 different scenarios. They said, cool, you can have 7.5 hours of normal sleep, and then let's see how you go. So they were super efficient, because 92% of the time they were in bed trying to sleep. They were actually asleep, happy days. Most of us are 90 to 95% efficient, by the way. Then they gave them a 7.5 hour sleep opportunity, but they kept waking them up throughout the night. How irritating is that? And they only got 4 to 4.5 hours of sleep. I would have been very grumpy. And then in scenario 3, they just gave them short sleep, 4 to 4.5 hours, and then you can see they were super efficient. So the question is, which was the better scenario? And when you were in this middle scenario, in bed for 7 and 7.5, but only accumulating 4 to 4.5 hours, you had less deep sleep than if you had just had that short 4 to 4.5 hours consolidated sleep, and then the next day your mood was worse as well. So it probably interfered with their REM sleep too. So we will take shorter, consolidated, good quality sleep any day over long, rubbish quality sleep. And here's the big question that I always get asked: can I nap? All right, so napping is a really tricky thing for most people, because it's a lovely way to relax and recharge. So no one is ever going to say, don't have that little guilty Sunday afternoon nap after a big training run. It's like very, very cool. It's sacred, right? That's fine. But if you are napping on a regular basis, it's probably a sign that you are massively underslept and that something is up with your nocturnal sleep. And it also has the ability to interfere with your nighttime sleep and then make that more problematic. And so my thing is that for athletes, you're going to get what's called a nap license. So certain people get nap licenses. Athletes do, shift workers do, parents of new babies do, and people who are sick, okay? Because you will have a longer sleep need than normal, and it's very difficult to get your 8, 9, 10, or even 11 hours of sleep in one stretch at nighttime to support the training you're doing. So then you are allowed to have an occasional nap, or a nap that's quite regular, to get you that extra bit of sleep that you need to support your training. Okay, so as long as your training levels are high and your nighttime sleep is in ship-shape condition, you are very welcome to have a nap license. All right, so what is healthy sleep then? It is one consolidated nocturnal sleep. We're designed to really sleep at nighttime, and occasionally you guys can put in the extra little nap. We should be as consistent as possible with our timing and our duration. We need to sleep in sync with our body clock, and I haven't chatted about this, but I just want you to think about this. Some of you might identify as being night owls. So those are people who typically can't fall asleep easily before midnight. Okay, body's not ready to do that. And if you were left to your own devices, you'd happily sleep till 8 o'clock the next morning, easily. Some of us are morning people. We typically find that individual endurance sport athletes, by the way, tend to be morning types. Up and going at 5, no problem, but want to crash by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Terribly antisociable way to be, but that's just life. And so it described the two extremes. Most people are actually in the middle. They're neither types. They go to bedtime up like 11, wake up around 7 if they could. You need to work out where are you on that little spectrum of owlishness to larkishness, and then try and sleep in sync with your clock. The best quality sleep you're going to get as a night owl is sleeping after midnight and going and sleeping in as late as you can the next day. So delaying meetings in the morning, for example, if that's possible. Most of you are probably morning types, so it's fabulous for you guys to be able to be going to bed really early, wake up really early, and get that training session in before work as well. Morning people do far better training in the morning. You will get more out of your body, you will adapt far more. Nighttime people do better training in the end of the day. They are much better to adapt from those training sessions. So figuring that out is important. More or less, your sleep patterns must be aligned with the environment. Really what that means is we're designed to sleep at nighttime. You should be able to fall asleep easily. What do I mean by that? You should be able to fall asleep within 5 to 20 minutes. That's normal. Okay, people think, oh yeah, if I'm not falling asleep in 10 minutes, it's a problem. It's not a problem. It's completely normal to take 5 to 20 minutes to fall asleep. That's normal. So as long as you're doing that, that's cool. Should be able to stay asleep. And if you do wake up at nighttime, you should be able to just go to the bathroom, turn over, go back to sleep, no problem. You should be able to sleep without medication. There is no way you can tell me you have healthy sleep if you need medication to help you sleep. You shouldn't be massively reliant on catch-up sleep. So that's where you extend your weekend sleep by heaps. If you're doing that, it means that what you're doing in the weekdays is too short, and that's not great. Just 5 days of short sleep that is too short interferes with your metabolism. And as an athlete, you really don't want that to be happening. So we try and be quite regular with our duration. Your sleep's supposed to feel restorative. That's the whole point of sleep. We don't actually care what's happening while we're asleep. We actually couldn't be bothered, really. But we're very excited to know that when we wake up, we feel full of energy and ready to go. And if your sleep's not restorative, then there's something up and we should probably take a look. And so you should feel rested on waking, and you should be on your A game in the day. So last thing, just quickly to share with you, people always say to me, what about that night before a race? Because very often sleep is horrible the night before a race because you're nervous. So sometimes you're worried that you're going to have a good day or a bad day. And sometimes you've got to set that alarm and you're worried you're going to oversleep and you've got to get up earlier than normal. And what happens if I miss the start? And all of these things happen. And so very often we do have a pretty rubbish sleep the night before a race. Well, the reality is that if you do have a bad sleep the night before, it's not a train smash, provided you have had enough sleep in the week leading up or the 2 weeks leading up. So what we do is we bank sleep in the weeks leading up so that it doesn't matter too much if we have a rubbish night the night before. And I won't go into the science behind it, but there's good evidence to show that if you can bank your sleep in the week leading up, it doesn't really matter too much if you have one rubbish night. You are super resilient. Your body will secrete a whole heap of adrenaline. You will be fine on race day if you haven't had a great sleep, as long as you have put the work in before and made sure that you don't get sleep deprived in the week leading up to the race. That is far more concerning to me. Cool. So that's essentially where I'm going to leave it with you. And if anyone has questions, let me know.
Thank you, Professor Ray. Are there any questions from the audience before we run into the conclusions? We have a question. Naledi? Naledi?
Hello, thank you. It was a great presentation. Thank you. Just eating before sleep. Is there a sweet spot, or is it again dependent on people? I struggle with my sleep a bit, so I'm really sort of fascinating for me.
Yeah. So the timing of when you eat is kind of important. So you want a good 2-hour window between when you eat and when you sleep. So you want to try not to have too much in that period before. The trick with athletes when your training load is high is being able to get enough enough food in during the daytime so that you don't get hungry at night, because that can wake you up, and then you sometimes, like in multi-stage races, you need to get up and eat in the night, which is very, very uncool for your body, let me tell you, but it's kind of a lesser of two evils. So making sure that you have kind of stockpiled on enough food. In kids, we call it cluster feeding. You almost need to cluster feed towards the end of the day, but then give yourself a little 2-hour break where you give your metabolism a chance to come down and stop having to deal with food. That's about the sweet spot. Yeah. Oh, and there's people always want to know, oh, can I have a banana or milk? Or they come up with all sorts of things that are supposed to help with sleep. No, it doesn't happen. It's all a lie. Basically, if something makes you feel good, yay. It's going to make you feel warm and fuzzy. That's great. Let's go, because that's a better way to get into a happy place for sleep if you are feeling satiated. And sometimes warm milk does that for people. But there's nothing in the milk that's going to put you to sleep. I can guarantee you that.
What's the impact of adrenaline on sleep? Because I notice after an ultra or a marathon, I struggle to sleep.
Yeah, good. So when you've got a whole heap of adrenaline, you basically go into what we call sympathetic overdrive. So I'm sure you guys have heard about different parts of your nervous system. The one part puts you in fight and flight mode. That's generally where you have a lot of adrenaline, a lot of sympathetic activity. It is impossible to sleep, impossible, when you are in fight and flight mode. Whereas if you go into rest and digest mode, so that's where your parasympathetic nervous system is active, the sleep gate opens and sleep can come. So it's a somewhat unfortunate side effect of doing something that is quite a big extreme insult, because your body's gone like, oh my God, if she's going to do some more, like, I best I be ready for this. Okay. So you kind of have to there's not much you can do unless you are the master of being able to switch your body from fight and flight into rest and digest. There are some techniques which relate to breathing, for example, which sometimes can help a little bit to put you into that state, but it's really difficult. You've more kind of just got to ride out that night and wait for the next night to come. Yeah, not a cool answer, sorry.
Just also a question on the previous study where you said you'd rather have a shorter deep sleep than like a longer interrupted one. In like a hot summer night, if load shedding hits and you can't sleep with a fan, would you suggest like just trying to stay awake till load shedding's done and then go to sleep?
So I love this because we're speaking from recent experiences. This last, it's been really tough. So again, it depends. If the load shedding is going to be like 10 till midnight and you're happy as a night owl that you can still get midnight till 7 or something, then that's probably okay. But if that load shedding, for example, is 2 till 4, I mean, that's ridiculous. You cannot stay awake until 4. Even midnight to 12, I would say it's going to be a struggle to stay awake for that late. So that strategy that you refer to, it probably works kind of okay for night owls. It's probably going to be a disaster for the morning types. And so I guess it depends when that load shedding is. But yeah, I don't know, it just gets solar.
Say have healthy sleep.
Very.
And we all want to have healthy sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep for at least 6 to 10 hours straight without waking up, or fall asleep within 5 to 20 minutes. But some of us really struggle. And it's not because we are stressed or anything. You just, maybe from years of unhealthy sleep, it's difficult to get to that.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have so that we can get to that?
Sure. Cool. So I specifically didn't go down that rabbit hole because I was concerned that we could be here for a while, but definitely let me just address it like this. Did you know that 10 to 15% of people have like insomnia, for example, and 30 to 40% of people will have acute insomnia. So that's a huge number of people. So many of you sitting here, I don't think anyone sitting here has had perfect sleep for forever. It doesn't happen. And there are a number of things that drive sleep problems. And so it is worth putting in the time to try to understand, A, why is there a problem with sleep, and then B, finding the solution for it. So the first thing we would always do is there a medical reason for it? Is there an underlying sleep disorder? Does that need to be diagnosed and then treated? Is there an underlying physical health condition which is driving poor sleep or fatigue? And there are plenty of those, so that needs to be considered. Is there an underlying medical or mental health condition which is driving poor sleep as well, and or the medication thereof? And then that needs to be looked at and addressed. And so frustratingly for many people who fall into one of not the sleep disorder category, but the other two categories, you've actually got to address the problems around sleep. So not sleep, you ignore that. You address the underlying issues, and then sleep has a chance to resolve. But often that needs some very special work with something called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, because now we have an inherent sleep pattern and your body has often forgotten how to sleep well, which is quite a thing. And then also just for us gewone mense that don't have necessarily a sleep disorder or something else that's driving poor sleep, very often we actually just end up breaking our own sleep through very silly habits. This is obviously not where you're coming from, but I'm just saying that many of us do this. For example, excess caffeine consumption, too much blue light at the end of the day, working like an absolute slave until 10 o'clock at night, slam down the laptop, jump into bed, and then hope for the best. So like there's a lot of things that you can do which are really, really silly, which interfere with your sleep. Unchecked stress. And so I'm not saying proper anxiety or depression. I'm just saying general levels of stress. I mean, stress is the number one killer for sleep, without a doubt. So being able to pinpoint where your sleep difficulties are coming from is really important to be able to unpacking it. And it's not a simple fix, and each person has a different sleep story, and each person requires a different tailored approach. Yeah, but if you suspect you have a sleep disorder or another disorder which is driving that, like, please go and seek help. Yeah. Because nobody should settle for rubbish sleep. There is no reason that you're like, oh yeah, I'm a bad sleeper. I hate it when I hear it, I'm an insomniac. Well, what are you doing about it? It's like saying, I have hypertension, but don't worry, I'll just ignore it a little bit and hope for the best. Like, are you crazy? You would sort out your hypertension, right? Cool. Same thing with sleep.
When would you say, like, maybe someone would be sleeping too much? Say, for instance, you've always slept the perceived normal amount of time. In the evening, you kind of go to bed 9:30, 10:30, you wake up at 6. But then almost every single day, you have to have a nap, sometimes 2 naps, and you still kind of crash at the end of the night. Coffee also sometimes doesn't really work very well. It feels like it makes you a little bit sharper, but it doesn't prevent you from falling asleep at all. And you've been like this for many, many years. Would you say that that's something that maybe needs to be addressed, looked at?
So, I mean, the answer to that is potentially it would need to be looked at. And the question is your daytime function impaired? Because if you sleep more, are you able to function at a high level during the daytime? And if the answer is yes, then that's cool. You just have a long sleep need. There are some people that biologically or genetically have a very long sleep need, and it could be 10, 11 hours, could even be 12 hours actually. And that's just a little bit unlucky, I guess, because you suddenly don't have as many hours in the day as other people. But if you are suspicious that there is something else that might be underlying that, sometimes there's underlying depression, for example, which can look like a very long sleep need or make a person feel really tired. Or a couple of other conditions, then that might be worth investigating. But at the end of the day, the test is if you extend your sleep sufficiently, are you able to get rid of that fatigue and that tiredness, and then are you okay? And if you are, then you just happen to have a long sleep need. But if despite your best efforts to sleep as much at every opportunity, and you still can't, then I would say that's a flag. Yeah. So there's no harm in being a long sleeper, by the way. And that's a little myth that's out there at the moment. So sleeping long is not going to cause you problems. But the problem that the people get is that sometimes long sleepers have an underlying condition which is going to ultimately impair their health. And so then it looks like it's a long sleep, but it's not. It was the underlying condition.
Can I do the last one, please?
Sure.
I really don't sleep. They know. On a serious note.
But that's
I
because
sleep
you're
too-
running when the sun is
No.
not up yet. I'm
Okay.
kidding.
Can we talk this way? Well, yeah,
Cool.
that's fine.
No worries. Thanks.
Can we give all of our speakers a huge round of applause? Before I let you go home, there's one or two things I wanted to show you, and it's also including the talk that's happening in next month. Okay, that doesn't look right. All right, so if you would like access to more of what we've shown or seen or heard today, we do have a product called SSISA Research Digest. Similarly, what we did today is we took complicated science and we withered it down into something a little bit more understanding and translatable. So if you scan the QR code, you'll be taken to a form. Oh, that's my WhatsApp. It's bedtime for me as well. You'll be taken to a form where you could get 1 month free access to SSISA Research Digest. It is a subscription model, so if you want to stay informed about all of the latest evidence in exercise science from us, please make sure that you continue with your freemium and you'll be up to date. And then our next talk, we'll be welcoming back Prof. Andrew Bosch for race day prep. So this is the 8th of April, which means if it's 37 days from today to get to Two Oceans Marathon, this seminar is happening in 29 days' time, which means you've got about just under a week to be prepared. So at this seminar, we'll be talking about race day prep from a running science perspective, from a nutrition and dietetics perspective, and then also a podiatry perspective. So if you are needing to find out about, do I run in new shoes on the day of Two Oceans Marathon? Calvin will tell us, probably not. And then also any of these gels or cramp blockers and those kinds of race day prep meals or carbo loading will be dealt with by Marie McGregor. And then Prof. Bosch will give us some insights as to being prepared for the race on the day. And then finally, I'd like to thank oopsie, that went way too quickly. The Sports Science Institute, UCT, Two Oceans Marathon, HPELS, Cape Podiatry and Sleep Science for collaborating on this successful seminar. If you want some more information, please email summits@sisa.com. I'll respond as quickly as I can to give you some more information about our calendar for seminars on all topics that's taking place at SSISA. Without further ado, I'd like to send you off to go and get some rest. Please make sure that you take all of the information with you and have a lovely evening. Thank you very much.